Welcome, friends. Thank you for joining us in our studies of the Holy Scriptures. We're grateful that you've chosen today to consider the question that Jesus asked, and it is an interesting one. Jesus was in the last week before he was crucified. He was in Jerusalem, and there were different ones that came to him on the Tuesday of that week with their questions. The Sadducees asked a question about the resurrection. The Pharisees asked about what was the great commandment. And those that were Herodians, in conjunction with those that were Pharisees, came to him and asked him this question. Teacher, we know that you're true and that you are impartial and that you care not for any man. We want to know what it is then. What do you think? Is it lawful to pay tribute to Caesar or not? And Jesus knew that they were insincere, that they were hypocrites. The Pharisees did not believe that it was lawful to pay tribute to Caesar. And the Herodians were Jews. They were ones that were in sympathy with Herod, and they thought that it was lawful. And so, however Jesus might answer the question that they asked, they thought would put him in disfavor with either the government or else with the Jews. But they did not know with whom they were reckoning with. And Jesus said, you hypocrites, why do you make trial of me? Bring me the tribute money. That is, the piece of money that they paid tribute to Caesar with. And they brought to him a denarius. A denarius was a coin that was very common among them. It was that was the equivalent, so some suppose, of a day's salary and worth about, in our money, about 17 cents. And he held it up to them. And he said, whose is this image and this superscription? Well, of course, the coin was coined, minted by the Roman government. And the reigning Caesar at that time was the image that was on that coin. And whatever things by which he was recognized and identified was likewise engraved on it. And so they said, well, the image is Caesar. And Jesus said to them, well, then you render to Caesar the things which be Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God. They were astonished. They could not find anything at fault with the things that he said. So they went away in astonishment and embarrassed because they had thought to place Jesus in a very unfavorable light. And it was they who were that was placed in an unfavorable light. There are some people that have the idea that government, civil government, is sinful. That it is that is something that is the devil. That civil government exists by the power and the authority of the devil. No, my friends, they're mistaken in that. In the book of Romans, in the 13th chapter, Jesus said these words, through the Apostle Paul, of course, that let every soul be in subjection to the higher powers. For there is no power but of God, and the powers that be are ordained of God. And as the apostle continued to write, he said of these, he's a minister of God to thee for good. He is one that bears not the sword in vain. Therefore, you be in subjection to him. And in the writings of Paul also, but to Titus in the 3rd chapter, he said, let every soul, or rather put them in mind to be in subjection to authorities, to be obedient, to be ready unto every good work. The Lord said through the Apostle Paul in the book of Romans, the 13th chapter, that civil government is a minister of God to thee for good. Those powers that be, the Roman writer said, are ordained of God. Civil government has a role. God ordained that role. And that role is that he is a minister of God to thee for good. Well, what good does government do for us? My friend, you're not thinking. Civil government renders many blessings to mankind. First of all, it is that helps to protect the citizens. If it were not for power and lawful power of government, there would be those that would think of nothing but coming in and killing and taking away whatever possessions those that were weaker than they possessed. And so it is a minister of God for thee for good. Not only is that, it bears not the sword in vain. It is that punishes the wicked and the evildoer. But on the other hand, there are other blessings that it has. The blessings that comes from government is that it does coin money. Have you ever thought about the blessings of having coins, money, and dollar bills, and currency? My friends, what a state we'd be in if that we just had to choose out certain things, merchandise, vegetables, things of that sort, in exchange for other things. Now, people have in ages past done that, but having a standard of money is that makes it so much easier. And a dollar is worth a dollar. It means the same thing to a man, whether he's $1 million or a millionaire, or whether he's a pauper. It will buy the same thing. And so he is a minister of God to thee for good. Yes, he helps as far as helping protect individuals. He's one that protects us as far as currency is concerned. He provides means of education for us and our children. And as we grow old, there are those provisions that he makes for us in our old age. Government is a minister of God to thee for good. But government has its role. And as long as it stays in that role, the responsibility of man is to obey them that have the rule of you. But government may step out of its role. And when it does that, then man is not obligated to obey. To the contrary, he must obey God rather than man. Jewish authorities told the apostles that they were to speak no longer in the name of Jesus. But the apostles answered them, whether it's right in the sight of God to hearken to you, then unto God judge you. We cannot but speak the things that we've seen and heard. Government has a role, but its role is outlined by God. But when it steps into the authority that some of those in the first century did, and second century, and before the era of Christ, in that the Caesars claimed themselves to be God and demanded of citizens that they acknowledge such, then the child of God is that has no obligation to obey, and to the contrary, would be denying his own Lord were he to do so. And this was a great problem that Christians in the first century and the third century experienced. For the Caesars at that time, most of them regarded themselves as God and demanded of the citizens that they submit themselves and acknowledge him as Lord. And as long as they would once a year put some incense in their offering in the Roman or in the temples, say Caesar is Lord, that satisfied them. Go about, worship whatever God you want to. But the child of God could not say Caesar is Lord, because there is only one Lord. And in that instance, it was that he couldn't do. There is a role for government, however, and Jesus specified that. Render to Caesar the things that be Caesar's. He coins money, and therefore, in that coin that he coins, I pay him the tribute. I am submissive to the laws that he is, for he's a minister of God to me for good. But he's not God, and he cannot demand of me that I acknowledge him as God. Render to Caesar the things which be Caesar's, but unto God the things that are God's. My friend, there is a place that God demands. He must be first in the hearts and the lives of those that would be saved after a while. I must make him Lord. But because he is Lord, he has said you submit yourselves to government and you pay proper tribute and taxes. Thank you for listening. May God bless you and yours. And we look forward to having you study with us again.